Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Luckenuk. I'm one of the presiding officers for the Ontario College of Teachers, and it's my pleasure this afternoon to help MC the proceedings this evening. So welcome to your Ontario College of Teachers annual meeting of members. This year's meeting is a little different than previous years as the college is celebrating, and as you know, its 20th anniversary. The college's history is filled with memorable moments, triumphant milestones, and success stories. Today's agenda reflects that. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone about our question and answer session that will follow presentations by the council chair, registrar, and a selection of committees. If you have a question, please write it down and place it in one of the many boxes around the room. We'll be collecting these questions throughout today's meeting. Today's meeting is also, so for your information, being live streamed over the internet. For those at home, you can submit questions by visiting pollev.com/OCTOEEO or by downloading the Poll Everywhere app on your smartphone or tablet. Enter OCTOEEO to join the presentation and submit your questions. Now let's get down to business. To start things off, I would like to welcome Council Member Elizabeth Edgar Webkamagad to the podium to provide opening greetings. Elizabeth.
Good evening, everybody. Ani Bojo, Elizabeth, Minawanan, Oshkas, Indigenous Kas, Jajak Dodem, Boating Dada, and I welcome you to our evening. I'm very thankful to stand up here and be asked by my colleagues to share greetings that allow all of us to start the evening on the same page. So if I could ask for your thoughts this evening. I'm not going to actually do like an opening prayer or anything like that. What I'm looking for is your good intentions, just like my good intentions, my colleagues' good intentions. Ask for you to listen with open heart, open mind, open eyes, and certainly present any questions with a good heart, good mind, and know that we're all here for the good of the people, our students, the ones that we work for. So enjoy your evening and welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. In 1997, the Ontario College of Teachers opened its doors. To get from there to today, it has been no small feat. In its 20-year history, the college has had a series of registrars, chairs of council, each one significantly shaping and contributing to the college. Well, right now, I would like to introduce you to the leaders of today. Our CEO and registrar, Michael Salvatore, and our Chair of Council, Angela De Palma, to introduce our panel. Please give them a warm welcome.
Good evening, everyone, and bonsoir. Thank you for joining us tonight. As the speaker said, my name is Michael Salvatore, and I'm the CEO and registrar here at the Ontario College of Teachers, and proud to be here with Angela to cap off our evening. As the speaker mentioned, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year at the college, and for this reason, we felt that it was the ideal time to bring together a panel, and we'll introduce to you in just a few minutes, who have all played a very unique role in making what the college is today. And we're going to ask them to share their reflections on our history, our past, and some of their views about our future.
For the next 40 minutes, we'll all go back in time and discuss some defining moments of the college that demonstrate how we serve the public interest. So please allow us to introduce our panel to you. Beginning with Dave Cook. Dave was elected as the new Democrat MPP for Windsor Riverside in 1977. A riding he held for 20 years. In 1990, when Bob Rae was elected Premier, Dave was appointed Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs and later served as Government House Leader and Chair of the Management Board of Cabinet. In 1993, Dave was appointed, and I have the date correct this time, Dave was appointed Minister of Education and Training. As minister, he established the Royal Commission on Learning that led to the creation of the college. He is the chair of the board of directors of the Education Quality and Accountability Office, also known as EQAO. He has served as chair of the board of governors for the University of Windsor, as well as Seneca College. Michael?
Seated next to Dave is Dr. Avis Glaze, a dynamic international leader in the field of education. She's been acclaimed for her work in leadership development, student achievement and well-being, school and system improvement, character and soft skills development, and equity of outcomes for all students. She was sent to South Africa by the Canadian government to assist with education reform and national reconstruction at the invitation of Nelson Mandela, and was also invited to assist with education reform in New Zealand. She's worked with teachers, principals, policymakers, and politicians in over 40 countries and U.S. states. Avis was the senior advisor to the Minister of Education and founding CEO of the Literacy and Numeracy Secretariat. She was a commissioner on the 1994 Royal Commission on Learning that was established by Dave Cook, which recommended the establishment of the Ontario College of Teachers. Margaret Wilson, who is seated next to Avis, started her career as a grade 2 teacher. She was elected as president of her Secondary Teachers Federation district in Toronto and later president of the provincial Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation. She also served the Ontario Teachers Federation as president, secretary, treasurer, and CEO. In 1996, she was persuaded by the then Minister of Education to lead the development of the college. She took the concept from an idea on paper to legislation and a fully operational regulatory body in just 13 short months, at which point she was appointed as the first registrar by Dave Cook in the early spring of 1995. Since retiring from the college, Margaret has been on the board of Seneca College. Her most recent task was the 2015 review of the Toronto District School Board.
And our final, but certainly not least by any means, panel member is Donna Marie Kennedy, who is a retired educator and was the first chair of the college from 1997 to 2000. She was instrumental in the review and the adoption of the college's bylaws and procedures that govern the day-to-day business of the college. She was also the provincial president of the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association from 2003 to 2007. Ms. Kennedy was a classroom teacher, special education teacher, and consultant in a number of locations across the province, including Ottawa, Toronto, and Maynooth near Algonquin Park. In addition, Ms. Kennedy lived and worked near Cloyne, Ontario, in a L'Arche community, an organization dedicated to the creation and growth of homes, programs, and support networks with people who have intellectual disabilities. She retired from teaching in 2007.
We're very pleased to have these highly respected individuals with us tonight, and I'd ask you to please join us in welcoming them to our annual meeting. Another note about our questions throughout our meeting tonight: if there are any questions for which we don't have the answers readily available, we will follow up, and if there are questions that come in through our live stream that we're unable to answer during our time, we'll also make sure that we follow up and provide those answers to those questions through our website. I will invite you to check there in a few days to give us time to do that. And now on to our special guests and on to our panel. We have a couple of questions for you, and the first is for you, Avis. Looking back over the last 22 years since the Royal Commission released its report for the love of learning, which included a recommendation to establish the Ontario College of Teachers, how would you say the college has contributed to the development of the profession of teaching itself as envisioned by the Royal Commission?
That's good. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. But before I answer your question, may I just thank the individuals on stage for the role that they played in making the college the the leading edge, world-class organization that it now is. And I can say that because although I live in British Columbia now, I have come back a few times with guests from abroad, because when they phone me and say, what should we see in Ontario, I proudly say, you must visit the college. So I have had an opportunity in recent times to visit. And whenever I do, I am filled with such, very often it's emotion to see what has been created based on the recommendation we made as a Royal Commission on Learning to establish the college. And throughout these years, to see the number of registrars, CEOs, and chairs who have contributed to the development of what the college now is. And I'll always be grateful to, I still say, Minister Cook, for that opportunity. Now, when I think of what the college's mandate is, there are a number of things that I am proud of in terms of my question. You have done an outstanding job in delivering on this aspect. You've worked through many issues of teacher education, although there's still some that are remaining.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to Mr. Cook. The idea of a self-regulatory body for the teaching profession in Ontario was first proposed in 1967 in the report of the Hall-Dennis Commission and attempted by your predecessor, that's Stevenson, in the mid-'80s. From your perspective, why was giving Ontario teachers full professional status so critical?
Well, I guess one of the points would be I mean, the way that the Royal Commission wrote the report and the recommendations and the study of it and so forth, and the history. I think it was I know it was recommended by the Hall-Dennis report. I think there were comments in previous reports. So the concept had been discussed for decades. I mean, I was on school board in 74, 75, and that's when the profession started to develop more, both in terms of federations, legal structures for being able to bargain and so forth, and more professionalization in terms of qualifications. When I became minister, I found it very strange that occasionally a lawyer would walk into my office and say, there's a particular case I need to talk to you about, a disciplinary case that's gone through the Ontario Teachers Federation, which was the process at the time, and at the end the minister has to make some decisions around this. And it just seemed to lack complete, on the discipline side, complete transparency to anyone in the community. And to me, didn't make any sense, quite frankly, that there would be anything that would go through the federations to be dealing with discipline, that there had to be something, some organization that was looking out completely for the public interest, and in this particular case, I would say the student interest, because essentially the College of Teachers should be seen, in my view, as a consumer protection agency, and it's an agency to put in place good programs, make sure that the faculties are offering good education for the teachers that get in, but also to make sure that there's standards of practice and there's expectations in the classroom and there's methods by which complaints can be filed and that they can be heard, and they can be heard publicly and reported publicly, so that we have confidence, public confidence in the public education system. One of the unique things that the Royal Commission recommended and that was followed through on was accreditation of the faculties of education. I do not believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe any other profession has ever been granted that. And as someone who has served on a university board, I can tell you it's still probably not very popular with the universities, but I think it is the right thing to do. So the structure was there. You have developed over the years. There's been bumps along the road. There's no doubt about that at all. As you've grown, it's a huge organization. It's as I recall, the biggest self-governing college in Canada, in the world. So it's huge. So there was going to be some bumps, but I think you've made progress, and I think the transparency is important, the expectations, the standards, and the quality. At some point during the discussion tonight, I want to talk a little bit about governance, because that's one area where When I read the Royal Commission report, and I've reread it again for tonight, the governance structure has been totally changed in a way that doesn't respect the recommendations of the Royal Commission, and certainly does not respect the direction that we had set. And I think, maybe at some point we'll have a chance to talk a bit about that, what the implications are, and how my desire that at some point in the future a government will relook at that and put it back and reflect more what other professional colleges do. But by and large, I think the profession deserves a lot of credit for what's been achieved over the last 20 years, and I hope that we'll be able to celebrate another 20 years.
Thank you. I do too. Donna Marie, the next question is a little bit of a preamble, so I'm going to quote you and then pose my question. I hope that I get it right. You said when you started your new role as chair, our new college has been given the unique task of collective responsibility for our profession, our professional education, and for our professional needs. Our challenge will be to build on the excellent work teachers have done in Ontario and continue to improve in all of these areas. An important function of a self-regulatory body is, of course, to operate in the public interest and to be seen to operate in the public interest. Could you talk a little bit about how members of the profession and members of the public worked together during the first council to set the groundwork so that could occur, and if there were any particular successes that that come to mind, you could perhaps highlight those?
Thank you, Michael. I did tell Michael before when I was asked to come that he was a very brave man, putting us all up here on the panel, because I'm sure he gave us the questions ahead of time, but he really doesn't know what we're going to say.
That's right.
So, and I've already had my first argument with Dave Cook. So, let me preface my remarks by saying that first college was incredibly political. It was a difficult time in education in Ontario. In the first 3 years that I was chair and Margaret registrar, we had 3 ministers of education. There was Snowbelin, Johnson, and then Ecker. The climate around education was really terrible. It was not nice to be a teacher during those years, quite frankly. So the public appointees to the College of Teachers were political appointees. There was no question about that. They all had a political agenda. The teacher members of the college were Federation members, all of us to a man and a woman. So it set up a very interesting dynamic for that first college. What I can say is that all of the men and women around that first council had incredible debates, unbelievable debates, quite frankly. But I think there was a respect at that first council that was necessary to make it work. Everything was a battle, but there were good discussions at that table, and people will argue that Federation members shouldn't have been there. I would say they were the best people to be there. They had an understanding of education in the province. They understood the political issues of the province, and I think it was incumbent upon us as teachers and as members of the public as well to represent the profession. So those are my opening remarks. What did we accomplish? I have to put on my glasses because it's quite a long list. When you think about it, if you looked at that diverse group of people who probably at the beginning would have thought that we couldn't have come to any consensus, to any agreement, we had a phenomenal degree of success. The bylaws that were already mentioned, we did the standards of practice, the ethical standards. We stood up to the government in Bill 160, and that was with the appointed members as well, against the possibility of having non-teachers in the classroom. I think that was one of the finest moments for the college that we established ourselves as an independent body, not always agreeing as a council necessarily, but we were independent. Independent of government, and I would say independent of federations. Dave will talk about that later, but let's see where that goes. We stood up to the issue of teacher testing. We dealt with teacher shortages at the time. We established all of the committees, and of course the protocols for the discipline committees that were also set up at that time. So for me, one of the finest memories that I have of the college is the establishment of the college as an independent body. I truly believe that. I believe that they still are. I think it's something that you need to guard. I think you need to be able to stand up to everyone, to governments, to federations, to whoever the interests are, the specific interests in education are. But I do believe that it can and should be an independent body, and I believe we were an independent body.
Thank you, Donna Marie. I was taking notes and consumed with your responses that I almost forgot to ask the next question. To Margaret, as the Registrar Designate of the Implementation Committee, and then as the first college registrar, you were faced with many tasks and details, from overseeing the transfer of responsibilities from the ministry and the Ontario Teachers Federation to setting up the college's office space. From your perspective, what was the greatest challenge the college faced in those early days, and how was it overcome?
During the period when I was registrar designate, I was sort of queen for the year. And so I could, with authority, find office space, rent office space, start to hire staff, start to try to figure out what the needs of a as yet unelected council would be. We had the Act. Well, the Act was being developed partly while I was doing all the other stuff, when I think about it. But it was, how does one develop an organizational structure so that on the day that the first council met, it could fulfill its duties. It was about halfway through the process of organizing everything that somebody in legal in the ministry, Tony Brown, I think, said, did I understand that on day one of the operation of the council, we had to issue new certificates to every teacher in Ontario? Oh, that sounds simple, right? Because I hadn't really thought that through, but then neither had Tony until he'd gone and done some research and was talking to Legislative Council, and they said, this has to happen, this has to happen. So when the first council met, I stood up and said I had also, I had set a fee. And I can see my union friends at the back of the room when I said, and it's legal. There's nothing you can do about it. This is the fee. It was the transfer of all the information from the Ministry of Education and the issuing of the new certificates that became a logistical nightmare. And as far as I was concerned, had the potential for colossal negative effect on teachers, because the ministry department that handled certification had always been understaffed and underfunded. And you remember the maxim about computers, garbage in is garbage out. We issued all of the new certificates, and thousands of them had errors. And so to bring the members back in, we had to figure out a correction process, which was not pretty. As a matter of fact, I never got around to correcting my own. Somebody back in 1963 had made a decision that every certificate that got transferred over to the computer that year would say that the degree had been granted in 1963, for instance. That kind of dumb stuff. But people were phoning in and saying, I didn't go to university in the States. Where's St. Charles, Illinois? So it was a matter of getting every staff member who was willing, and I'll say 99.9% of them were willing, to volunteer so that we could get the correction process done as quickly as possible. Don't care what your rank is in this organization, we're going to fix the problem. And we did get it fixed, I think within about the first 5 months, because it took time for people to send stuff in. We had to get new documents and so on. And as that happened, people started to believe that the wheels were not going to fall off this bus. So really, from a registrar's point of view, it was the operational stuff that we had to be on top of so that the council could do its work. Staff had to be ready to support the council to do its work. And the first council readily agreed that we still didn't have enough staff. I mean, I didn't hire everybody under the sun. Once we had committees operating, we knew who else we needed in the many areas. And the most important part of doing all that fixing and so on is keeping staff morale up, because they're taking the ugly phone calls from friendly teachers.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you for doing that initial work. A question to any or to all of you, looking at or drawing on your own experience and maybe looking at the college as it has developed and as it is now, could you share your thoughts on any areas where you think the college has developed significant or deep expertise in the regulatory sector? Avis, please.
Yeah, I think a few areas would be, for example, you continue to add some important AQ courses. I just recently learned that there is a new course for teaching LGBTQ students. And to be honest, someone who believes strongly in human rights and has advocated for all children in the system, I was delighted to see that our teachers and principals will have the knowledge, skills, we hope attitudes, to address problems that relate to a significant number of our students in the system. So I hope that you will continue that strong push towards human rights issues so that no group is left out. I've often said you cannot say you are a human rights advocate if you can only advocate for certain individuals. So by adding the course for LGBTQ students, I felt very good about that. Again, you have as well done an outstanding job around the investigative process and processes that you have developed, and you have been honing those over the years. I know that people from across the globe want to learn about your experiences here, and you have continued to move to new levels of attainment. And you've supported excellence in teaching by offering scholarships and bursaries as well. To me, that is very important to say to people, if you want to be a lifelong learner, here are ways that we can assist you. So I was very delighted to read about some of these new strategies and enhancements that you have made. And of course, you continue to work on teacher education programs. But as we have been discussing, we still think there is a lot that needs to be done in this area. And we hope that there'll be opportunities to talk about how to work with the universities in making sure that faculties of education are not just the poor cousins of the university. Thank you.
They're the rich persons. There's enough money in faculties to spread all over. That's the problem. Yeah. I just want to add one observation from, I mean, again, there's been bumps in the road, but when there's been cases where there's been discipline and hearings, yeah, you went through a rough spot, and there was some work done to look at that. But in the last long period of time, when I now read about some of these stories and that there's hearings and that there's findings, I no longer see anything, at least in the newspaper stories that I've read, that are skeptical or critical. I think the credibility has been well earned back by the college. And that's pretty much demonstrated by the way that these things are now reported in the paper, and that confidence has been re-earned.
Well, it would seem that we're doing things in order. Good teachers, here we are. I would say, for me, one of the issues that's probably not that obvious to the broader public is the staff expertise. Right from the get-go, And this is a shout out to all the staff members of the college from whatever level that you're working at in the college. My experience was if I needed information, it was provided to me immediately. And I think that's been an ongoing strength of the college, the staff. So, and I mean that at every level. I was most fortunate to have people, professional people that I worked with at every level at the college. So I think that's clearly important, and I think that still goes on even in being prepared or being asked to come here today. It's clear that the college staff is exceptional. So I do want to say that. And I think the other thing that the college has done is, for me anyhow, is the codification of what teaching is all about through the standards of practice, through the ethical standards. So all of those things are things that have been important to me and certainly important to my family. We're 3 generations of teachers, so it's been nice to see that codification, giving voice and stature to things that we've all done in our careers. So that's certainly those are 2 things that I see the college.
I think that the major area has been accreditation of the faculties of education. Because Dave's right, we're it in terms of having that kind of authority. Now, we're not alone in the world. The General Teaching Council for Scotland has been doing that for over 40 years. And they gave us a lot of advice initially in terms of how we should proceed with that. So it has been a process that I think has finally given teachers influence over what happens in the faculties. Enough? No. But I think one thing to be careful of is that it's possible to become too friendly with the faculties. And in the whole argument over teacher education and its duration, and the number of teachers who were being churned out every year out of the milch cows of the university, the faculties, nobody talked about closing any faculties. Nobody. And it's quite clear that we don't need all of the faculties that we have in terms of producing, whether it's a 1-year or 2-year program, we don't. But every university president loves to have a faculty of education. And during the time when I was registrar, I had one university president ask for a meeting. Of course, I said yes. And she came and she wanted my support to open a faculty at her university, which she was going to staff mostly with cross appointments from the math department and the science department. Elementary or secondary teaching qualifications, oh, well, no, they don't need that. And she was interested in, and said it, the money. So that is still there.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So we've heard about the expertise, and it's positive to hear about how much there is. What do you think are areas for improvement?
Are we going the same order?
Whichever order, whoever
reverse.
wants to begin.
Reverse.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice that Margaret doesn't have the last word. I'll go. For me, one of the serious areas for improvement is the area of accreditation. I'm very concerned, and you know, it's sad to say, but over the many years, and I think there have been some improvements. I don't want to be too critical. But my mother went to normal school, I went to Teachers College, and my nieces and nephews are now going to faculties of education. And some of the problems that happened way back when are still there. I don't agree with the 2-year program. When you look at students who want to become teachers, you've got a 4-year undergraduate program, 2 years teachers, faculty of ed, and then possibly 2 to 3 years before you become a teacher in your own classroom. That's an incredibly hard financial issue for people that are going into faculties of ed. It also, I think, and this may sound a little sexist, but I also think it limits the number of men who are coming into the profession, and I think it is an issue, particularly at the elementary level, where we do not have enough men in the classroom. So I will say that right from the get-go. As I said, I have a niece and a nephew in the faculties, and my niece has said the passion has been taken out of her desire to become a teacher because of her experience in the faculty. I think that's rather sad. The second thing that I would say where there needs an area of improvement is in relationships with federations. I do think that federations had and have a lot to offer to the college, and I think it is important that there be a better relationship. It's something that both sides have to work together. Both sides have to work together on this. But it is clear that federations have a level of expertise, as does the college and all other stakeholders. But I think that relationship has been not the best in the last number of years, and I think it's an area for improvement.
Let me say one thing in terms of men in teaching. I think the 2-year program is going to have an effect in specific subject areas in secondary, where traditionally they've been more male-dominated. Tech, math, the sciences, and I always wanted more men in my subject area, English. But in any case, I think that there is an area that the college, the ministry, the federations need to grapple with and don't want the third rail of teaching, and that is incompetence. In 20 years, the college has never had a complaint of incompetence. It is not credible that every single teacher in Ontario over 20 years is competent. Now, I'm not talking about being cruel to people who are performing satisfactorily. And that's what's expected in Ontario, not excellence, although we dream of that. But what is going on in the system when we have a teacher performance appraisal system that, well, I have a niece, a nephew, and a daughter in the system. I know what's still working, and I know what isn't. Why is it that when a principal says to a superintendent, real problem with this teacher, the superintendent nearly faints? And the principals in Toronto told me right up front, no support when we're dealing with somebody who's truly incompetent. What happens? Well, we all know, don't we? They're moved from school to school. The teacher is in the middle of an evaluation process. Teacher goes to doctor, goes off on stress leave. Process has to start again, probably in another school. The Standards of Practice and Education Committee of this college set standards of practice. What it has never done is draw out of those standards of practice the appropriate competencies that would be directly derived from them. The college let the ministry do that. It's in a manual that is 103 pages long. That manual is attached to the ministry's teacher performance appraisal system, and I don't object to the ministry having a system to do that, don't get me wrong. But the ministry system is very much tied to the observation of a single classroom lesson. Very specific about that. Consultation before, observation of the lesson, consultation afterwards. Certain number of days afterwards, a second observation. But a number of the standards of practice are not observable in the classroom. They're about collegial relationships, which are outside of the classroom, about relationships with parents, which are outside of the classroom. They're about values. These all appear in a ministry document. Where are they in the college's advice to members because the members need it? So then I track back to the discipline committee may, after a hearing, find a member to be incompetent. What's the college's definition of that? It's in our act. And I think we have a morass, but the thing that complicates the morass is an interesting section of the Education Act, 10.2. Anything to do with teacher performance appraisal. Anything including regulations, ministry policies, and guidelines, may be subject to grievance arbitration for a final decision. Does this mean that an arbitrator is going to decide whether or not a teacher is competent? Which is why the superintendents run scared, because that kind of grievance arbitration, $500,000 may get you out of stage one. I think the college needs to raise the issue with the minister, the ministry, and the federations, and this profession needs to get its act together to deal with those who've been bouncing from classroom to classroom. It's not many, but they have to be dealt with.
Very good. Would you like to go ahead? Concerning issues and future directions, just a few others. As I watch television, as I do have a little bit of time to do these days, when I hear about issues like fake news, it's one of them we've been hearing about over the last year or so, and others, which I will name a few, but when it comes to these kinds of issues, I ask, how are we helping our teachers to address some of these emerging issues? Media and communications. It is true that many school districts have communications departments, but it's very important. The teacher talking across the fence or the principal does a lot in a positive way, or sometimes it's negative, around our teaching profession. So communications and the media relations become very important. I also see a need for us to address the whole issue of the politics of education, because as teachers, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm not political, and people tend to dismiss educational politics in that way. But if you think of politics as one of the ways in which we influence decision-making, then I think all teachers need to be more political in terms of positive politics. How are we going to, in the future, address the issue of advocacy, educators as advocates around societal issues? When I think, and some people may say, that's not your issue, focus on teaching, that's enough. I have always felt that we do more. Teaching is number one, instructional effectiveness is key, but we work in communities as well. And when we think of how teachers are seen in their local communities, very often they're seen very, very positively. So when it comes to societal issues like basic income and a living wage, is there a role for us to play an advocacy role in terms of influencing where decisions go at all levels? Because ultimately, things like basic income will affect our students in terms of poverty issues in our schools. So we see across the globe various existential threats, environmental issues, although I will commend teachers because I think that is one of the areas in which people have done very well over the last number of years. When you see young children telling their parents what they can buy or can't buy, then you commend teachers because they have taken on the environmental issues and they've done a great job of it. So all I'm saying is let us develop a sort of a broader view of how what happens in society impacts the classroom so that they can be stronger advocates and advocacy for what happens to young children.
I'm just going to take on the, and it sort of flows a bit from what Margaret said, and I know Marie is not going to agree with me, but I reread the section of the Royal Commission dealing with teachers, and then the specific section that talked about the College of Teachers. And when you think of the makeup of the Royal Commission on Learning, there were no conservatives. I don't know your political background, but I know the others. There were no right-wingers on the Royal Commission. But the language that was used on what the Council of the College of Teachers should look like was very strong, incredibly strong. And the decision and recommendation that the College Council had to be completely separate from the teachers' federations was absolutely clear. They outlined what the role of the federations were, and of course we know working conditions, pay, economic issues. Those are, of course, I come from a union family. I've been on probably more picket lines than a lot of teachers have been on in my life. But when I look at what has happened, like the original makeup of the council reflected all of the other professional councils, and that was what we had put in the letter that the implementation committee was to follow, and the legislation did follow that. When I look at all of the other professional colleges, the only one that sticks out like a sore thumb is this one, where the community members have much smaller representation as a percentage of the council, and the federations have control. And that was very clear and it was a result of Gerard Kennedy's amendments to the governance. What the Royal Commission said was that the profession should have the majority, and then the community should have a significant number. Same kind of ratio is in most of the health professions. What Gerard Kennedy did was he used the language of classroom teacher, whereas we all know teachers are, some are in the classroom, some are principals, some are supervisory officers, some are directors. The profession was to have the majority, the teaching profession. That's now been changed. So when you look at some of the issues that Margaret raised, it's going to be pretty hard for the College of Teachers to ever grapple with those issues when the governance of the college is in the hands of the federations. When the college was first being considered, when the Royal Commission's report was filed, I was still minister, and 2 presidents of federations asked to have lunch, and we had lunch. And they said very clear to me, we will support the College of Teachers as long as you give the federations the majority on the council. And I said, no way. So, you know, I don't want to take away from what has been done at the college at all. I totally agree with Anne-Marie that there was a tremendous amount of work that has been done. So what I'm saying is not to say that everything deserves to be critical, but I think governance is essential to the issues that are taken on. And I don't think the public interest and the student interest is always going to be number one for the college as long as the governance and the makeup of the council remains as it is now. I hope one day a government will move it back in line with all of the other professions and in line with what the Royal Commission recommended.
I guess we don't rebut that, do we? No, there's lots of questions to go yet.
And in fact, because our time is coming to a close, we will omit a couple of the other questions and just move on to a final question that we hope all of you can respond to. And that being, what in your minds might be the most significant opportunities you foresee in the college's future?
I'll go. I think there's a real need to engage the teachers of the province, especially in the elections, and I don't know how you're going to do that. With only 4%, I just looked it up, with only 4% of the teachers participating in the election, that's a problem. If you're going to have a body that represents a group of people, how you're going to do that, I don't know. You have to engage the membership, though, that's clear. I disagree with Dave on the point that I do think classroom teachers do have the best interests of their students in mind, and that is in the best interest of the public as far as I'm concerned. And I think that will continue to be that. And classroom teachers really are the backbone of the educational system, and they are the ones who spread what this profession is all about. They're the ones who interact with the parents. And if you ask any parent who they trust, it's their, especially kindergarten teachers, they trust that their child's teacher. So I think the issue for me is how are you going to engage the profession in being involved in the college. I think there has to be different ways of involving the classroom teachers in decision-making. And again, I don't have the answer to that, but I think you're always going to have those people that are going to come forward who are interested and want to be involved. You have to get the people that say the college has nothing to do with me. And that happens to be my nephew. I spoke to him 1 hour before I came here. I said, can you tell me that I can tell the college? He said, the college I just have nothing to do with the college. So I think you have to reach those kinds of people, and that would be certainly my recommendation.
Next. I don't think Dave's point about classroom teachers is the proportion. And it's the proportion and the numbers that changed. But the other thing is the college governs principals and supervisory officers. So if you have a dearth of principals and supervisory officers on the council, how do you deal with competency issues for them? Because obviously there are competencies that are job dependent in this profession. Just call them in for a committee and rubber stamp whatever the committee does. And let me tell you, in a lot of the work I've done over the last 10 years, there are real issues there. So Mr. Kennedy had made a promise to the teachers' unions. That was the politics that was going on at the time, and we all knew it. It's a balance that he changed. Now, that balance actually didn't come out of the Royal Commission. It came out of the McClure Report on Civil Liberties, which is mid-1960s, which lambasted all of the medical professions for acting in self-interest and self-protection, right down to the numbers of people who got admitted to the professional bodies. It's a sort of multi-volume document, the McClure Report. But when I was dealing with Legislative Council, in terms of our legislation, I was told it was government policy. And this was Leg Council that had worked under the NDP, the Liberals, the Conservatives, not a young woman, that the principles established in the McClure Report were to apply to all professions in Ontario. Now, the one thing I'll say is they've never applied them to law, but all of the medical professions were brought under the same rules in terms of the balance between the public and the profession on a council. And I think in terms of our particular profession, given the nature of the job, principals and supervisory officers ended up grossly underrepresented. So it's that, not whether or not classroom teachers know what they're doing. They can do a very good job, and they always have on this council. But do you remember how many principals were on the first council who had been promoted by their federations as candidates? 5.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Margaret, you're a past federation person. You did all right, too.
But Donna Marie's right. The first council did work generally harmoniously, amazingly so. It was a job to be done, and they did it. Mm-hmm. Mr. Kennedy's activity is something else.
Very good. I would like to suggest that we have continuing focus on 3 areas. The whole issue of job-embedded professional learning. I think if we want to make the profession continue to be great, it has to foster learning throughout the lifespan of a teacher. So I think continuing focus on professional learning would be important. Further refinement and alignment of the standards of practice. I don't think we are at the zenith of our possibilities yet, but we are moving along very well. And I think the issue that Margaret raised to me is very important. We cannot say we're a profession if we cannot determine what constitutes competence and incompetence and are willing to do something about it. So I think that is an area that we need to continue to work on. Thank you.
These folks were all educators, I'm not. But I guess I would just finish by saying that I think the college, if the college always, and the council always thinks of what its basic responsibility is to the province, and that is to protect the public interest. It's not, I remember when the debate was taking place in the legislature, and there was one MPP that was railing against, it was one of my own MPPs, one of my colleagues, railing against the legislation. And he said, we want to make it a college for teachers. I said, no, it's not a college for teachers. It's a college for the public interest, for students. It's to protect the public interest. That's what the organization has to be. And if we always keep that as the forefront, then I think the progress will be made.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was certainly interesting and engaging, and it's quite obvious our panelists still continue to have passion for the teaching profession and education, so it's great to see. I'd just like everyone just to give our panelists and our moderators a round of applause for the wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if they put Dawn Marie and Mr. Cook on opposite ends on purpose, but good discussion. Thank you very much. Oh, looks like we have gifts, bearing gifts. So thank you so much. Right now, let Angela get settled, but I would like to invite our Chair of Council, Angela De Palma, up to the podium again to talk about the work of the College Council. Angela, please.
Good evening et bonjour. I'm Angela De Palma, the Chair of College Council. Before I begin, I'd like once more to thank our esteemed panelists, Margaret Wilson, Donna Marie Kennedy, Dave Cook, and Dr. Avis Glaze for a thoughtful, engaging, and insightful discussion. If I could please invite you to extend one more round of applause for our guests. So we've clearly come a long way since 1997. In the 20 years since the college's inception, we've been able to continue building on the strong foundation that the college's the first registrar, the first chair, and the first council have laid out. Aujourd'hui,
today, council has 37 members, of whom 23 are elected and 14 are named. Together, we are members of 14 committees. Our role is to lead the college to deal with its strategic priorities and fulfill its mandate to serve the public interest.
striving to continuously improve our work very seriously. Council met 4 times during the course of the 2016 calendar year and dealt with a number of significant policy issues, including improving the way Council governs and how the college does business, including a biannual review of our strategic priorities and college objectives, making amendments to existing and creating new professional advisories, our advice to teachers that will inform their professional judgment and practice, streamlining the accreditation process for teacher education programs. So yes, it is something we're working on. Educating and creating updating and creating new additional qualification courses for members. Receiving reports and recommendations from the Public Interest Committee. We worked closely with the government to shape the Protecting Students Act. And most importantly, strengthening student safety by implementing the Act into college practice. That's quite a long list, and yet there's more. Council also engaged the services of an external facilitator to support a timely review of our strategic priorities and to develop strategies to further support progress in implementing various action plans. I'm pleased that the work that began with the previous council and the college's senior leadership team continues still today. With our strategic plan as a compass, we continue to refine and sharpen the work of our focus of our work to ensure that we, your council, and committee decisions best serve and better protect the public interest. One of our strategic priorities is to enhance council and committee effectiveness. Something as simple as adopting new meeting management software had a big impact. It became easier for council to share documents. It also gave the public an electronic platform for easy information access when visiting the college. Last year, council also had the opportunity to meet Bruce Beardy, an OCT member, Anishinaabe artist, and an education advisor at the Independent First Nations Alliance in Thunder Bay. Bruce created visual representations of the college's ethical standards of care, trust, respect, and integrity. His artistic interpretations of our standards are accompanied by engaging storytelling from his wife, Kathy Beardy. Kathy is manager of education initiatives at the Nishabe Aski Nation. Their work can be seen on the 12th floor of the college just outside the Margaret Wilson Library. Nous avons une tradition annuelle.
We have an annual tradition. We recognize the talents and devotion of 3 future teachers through our program of awards. These students represent the excellence in training for education.
Bradshaw was last year's recipient of the Joseph W. Atkinson Scholarship for Excellence in Teacher Education. A little background on Krista. She's conscientious, and her colleagues describe her as inspirational. She also likes rock climbing and is trained in safe talk suicide alertness. One of her students, who was considering dropping out of university, said that Krista gave her renewed confidence to continue her studies. We also recognized Maria Sinclair, the recipient of the Ontario College of Teachers Primary Junior or Junior Intermediate Scholarship. Maria volunteers for several local Indigenous organizations and education venues, including the Museum of Ontario Archaeology. When she was young, Maria was diagnosed with a speech impairment and a learning disability. She draws from her personal experience to help her students find their individual ways of learning.
Our third recipient, Patrick Vaillancourt, received the scholarship of the college for intermediary and higher turns. Generous and indefatigable, he regularly collaborates with the community radio and the Council of Arts of his locality. He's also a member of the food bank of his regions and many other events such as the Terry Fox Day and the initiative of Let Them Be Kissed. It's told that he's so popular that for nothing on earth would his students miss even one of his classes.
Long list of applicants that were vetted by the scholarship subcommittee. A special thank you to the council members who read each and every application before selecting our finalists. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the college staff for their efforts. Together, staff and our council worked hard to offer members the best service possible and to ensure that we're protecting the public interest. As the evening progresses, you'll hear from some of my other colleagues on council as they report on the highlights and achievements from their respective committees. 2016 was a strong year for us, one filled with many accomplishments. And if the trend continues to hold, and it looks like it will, 2017 will no doubt be one to celebrate as well. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Angela. I would now like to invite a selection of council committees chairs to provide an update, as Angela said, of their activities from 2016. Committee Chair Ravi Vethamani will be reporting on the activities of the Standards of Practice Education Committee. Ravi, please join me up here.
Bonjour, Annie, Buzu, greetings. My name is Ravi Vethmani and I'm chair of the Standards of Practice and Education Committee. I'd like to start by publicly recognizing and thanking my committee fellows, including those who've served before me, for their contributions over the course of 2016. They include elected members Irene Chung, Susan Elliott-Johns, Jacqueline Karsmeyer, Shannon Marcus, and Vice Chair Richard Michaud, and publicly appointed members Shabnam Budwani, Marie-Thérèse Hokayam, and James Knott. The Standards of Practice and Education Committee advises Council on the development, implementation, and review of the ethical and practice standards and the professional learning framework. The committee also reviews additional qualification, or AQ, policy guidelines, and the associated research. Les normes et le cadre.
The standards and the framework approved by the committee in 2016 represent the vision of professionalism in Ontario. This vision is the very basis of teacher training, ongoing professional improvement and leadership in teaching in the province.
SP&E achievements in 2016. None was more satisfying than our response to our poster series based on our ethical and practice standards. Artist and OCT member Bruce Beardy created stunning visuals that depict the profession's 4 ethical standards that our chair has outlined, but also our 5 standards of practice from an Anishinaabe perspective. The posters address the college's strategic priority to broaden membership engagement in its work. More than that, however, they touched our hearts. By linking our words to vibrant, colorful, visceral imagery, Bruce encouraged us to look deeper, feel deeper, and explore further what it means to be a professional in teaching. The posters illustrate what it means to live and work, our shared values, and what it means to be connected to each other, to our students, and to the broader community. Once the posters were introduced to the field, demand exploded. By year's end, more than 20,000 people asked for sets. Beyond schools, they've also found a way into community and daycare centers and healthcare facilities. I encourage our visitors today, all of you, to please have a closer look at the original artwork that we've put on display. Our professional values, it seems, resonate everywhere. But that's only one example of SP&E's work last year. Extensive work was completed in teacher education to review additional qualification course guidelines, the content of which was developed collaboratively with members of the profession, education partners, and the public. In 2016, the SP&E committee approved 46 draft AQ course guidelines for provincial validation. The courses covered a gamut of basic and specialist subjects, instructional methods, and leadership knowledge ranging from senior biology to education law and principles development to understanding traditional teachings, histories, current issues, and cultures among First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I'm actually taking that AQ course this summer. Final guidelines for the Principal Qualification Program and the Supervisory Officers Qualification Program were approved for public release. 21 AQ course guidelines were developed through provincial partnerships. Our partners included the Social Sciences and Humanities Leadership Council, the Ontario History and Social Sciences Teachers Association, the Ontario Classical Association, the Ontario Philosophy Teachers Association, the Six Teachers Association of Ontario, and Six Nations Polytechnique. As well, the committee received information from provincial writing teams about 17 AQs that were in development, such as adapting curriculum for the Catholic school system, leadership en enseignement, special education for administrators, and a First Nations leader program. As a result of SP&E committee motions, and thank you to the committee members again, a number of regulatory changes were made in the teacher's qualification regulation. These included renaming qualifications, such as Native Studies to First Nation, Métis, and Inuit Studies, and clarifying French and English-only qualifications. To support its policy development, research, and standards-based educative work, the committee received reports about quality assurances and analyses of the Find an AQ function on the college's website, and survey data regarding teacher leadership. As well, we heard several presentations by members of the profession about principal and supervisory officer qualifications, First Nation languages, and teaching LGBTQ students. And I noted your remarks, and I had the pleasure of taking that course in 2014. The SP&E committee reviewed survey data, received 414 submissions for course accreditation, a 67% increase from 2015, and learned about 10 special institutes the college held for AQ course developers and instructors. In addition, the college facilitated 61 opportunities for teacher candidates, new teachers, teacher education leaders, principal candidates, AQ course developers, and internationally educated teachers to learn about the standards and various associated resources. Finally, the committee approved the release of videos and discussion guides to support the meaningful inclusion of First Nation cultures and worldviews within initial and continuing teacher education, and supported the development of a visual resource and discussion guide called Acting on Our Ethics, Caring for Haiti. The work of the Standards of Practice and Education Committee, I believe, is instrumental to meeting the college's legislated mandate. I provided a glimpse into our many activities in 2016 and would be pleased to entertain any questions and note your comments, Margaret, about the challenges that you've put forward for the Standards of Practice and Education Committee. So I look forward to taking back that conversation to the committee and to council. Thank you. Are we taking questions now?
Thank you very much, Ravi. So up next is Committee Chair Nicole Van Woudenberg, who will be giving a report from the Accreditation Committee. Nicole, please.
I originally had good afternoon, but we're heading into the evening, so I'm going to say good evening to the fellow teachers and the guests that are in the room today. Thank you for joining us today, especially with all the challenges and responsibilities that you have in your daily lives. My name is Nicole Van Woudenberg, and I'm an elected member of council for the South Central Full-Time Region, and I serve as the chair of the Accreditation Committee. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues on the committee formally by name and thank them for their contributions throughout 2016. Thanks to Vice Chair Susan Elliott-Johns and our elected members, Matthew Kavanagh, Claudio Patenot-Daniel, and Richard Michaud. Thanks also to our appointed members, Jean-Luc Bernard, Marie-Louise Chartrand, and Marie-Thérèse Hokayem, and of course, Colleen Landers. I'd also like to acknowledge former members, Angela De Palma and Tom Potter, who so positively contributed to our committee work during their tenure. I'd like to take this opportunity to provide some details regarding the work our 9 members undertake serving on this committee. And this will hopefully give you a glimpse into what council members contribute in addition to participating in council meetings. So the duties of the Accreditation Committee are stipulated in Regulation 347. The mandate is to grant accreditation with or without conditions to programs that meet the regulatory requirements. But what does that really mean? Well, you may have visited the college's website and reviewed the accreditation decisions that are readily accessible to the public. When a provider such as a faculty of education wants to offer a program of professional education, they have to apply to the college for accreditation. Likewise, on a 7-year cycle, programs that are already accredited require review to determine if accreditation will continue with or without conditions. The provider completes detailed documents that are submitted as an application, and the Accreditation Committee establishes a panel of 4 members. And the panel members include one appointed member, one elected member from the committee, as well as a roster member who has expertise that fit the profile of the programs under review, and one institutional nominee. A faculty of education may simultaneously have one or several professional education programs under review. For example, there may be a concurrent program and a consecutive program at the Faculty of Education, and therefore both programs would be reviewed. Typically, the panel meets and reviews the application and supporting documents that address the enhanced teacher education program requirements. This is followed by a week-long site visit to conduct interviews with various stakeholders, such as teacher candidates, associate teachers, the dean, and faculty, to name but a few. There is also an opportunity for the public to provide input, which is communicated through the Ontario College Teacher website. All information is considered and measured back to the requirements as set out in regulation. The panel drafts a report with its recommendation, and then the panel chair presents the report to the Accreditation Committee, whose members consider the evidence and the debate prior to determining a decision and writing a decision to grant accreditation with or without conditions.
There are 17 faculties of education which offer 47 training programs accredited by the college. 2 of them offer programs only in French. The Laurentian University with 2 programs and the U of O with 3 programs. When a program in French is subject to an accreditation test, it's the Francophone members of the council who are members of the subcommittee studying it.
Of the process remains focused on serving the public interest. This ensures that the providers graduate highly qualified teachers requesting certification with the Ontario College of Teachers. It provides consistency and peace of mind for the public that teachers qualified and certified to teach in Ontario have met the enhanced teacher education program requirements. Since I reported last year at the annual meeting of members, 6 panel reviews will have been completed by the fall, with 4 more panels on the horizon before 7th Council concludes. As you reflect upon your own fond memories of your teacher education program, feel pride in knowing that your program was accredited to meet the high standards required in regulation.
If you're interested, I invite you to become candidates to the council during the next set of elections.
And thank you for your time here today. If you do have questions, I will be here after the meeting if you wish to pose any questions then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. So next up, I would like to invite Robert Gagné, Chair of the Discipline Committee, to provide his committee's report.
So before I give my report, Ravi asked me to extend his apology to Colleen Landers. He forgot to mention her as part of his group. So good evening and bonsoir. I'm Robert Gagné, and I'm the chair of the Discipline Committee.
I came to the college having spent 36 years in various fields of elementary and secondary schools, and I am now here at the college.
A little bit of what Dave wanted or Marie Kennedy. I'm appointed, but with 36 years in education, and I'm sure not what that means. I will also like to list the people on my committee. We work really hard. We've done over 120 hearings, and that means that getting teachers to commit time at the college and then going back to their classroom or their school as principal or superintendent and having to catch up on the work that they've left behind. So we have appointed members: Jean-Luc Bernard, Marie-Thérèse Okem, Jane Ishibashi, Colleen Landers, Tom Potter, Marie-Claude Yakov, and elected members Anne Chiassini, Shanley Linton, Sarah Nouini, Brigitte Vidal-Piquet, Vicky Shannon, Stéphane Vallée, and Ravi Vetamani, and Wes Vickers, who is vice chair. The main role of our committee is to consider allegations of incompetence or professional misconduct that are referred to us mainly by the investigation committee. The discipline committee hearings are open to the public. One main highlight that you might be interested in knowing is that the provincial government just passed Bill 37, Protecting Students Act. That bill is important because it brings long-sought changes into law to protect students even more. Among the various changes, it formalizes the college practice to publish all disciplinary decisions on our website with the name of the college member. It also means that a member will now have his or her teaching certificate revoked in all cases of sexual abuse or acts relating to child pornography. The bill represents our commitment to improve our investigative and hearing processes and practices and be much more efficient, open, and transparent. I promised I would keep it short. I will also gladly entertain questions once we have completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Before we move on, I'd just like to take one more moment to remind you that we are collecting questions for the question and answer session. You can submit your questions in writing by writing them down and putting them in the drop boxes that are around the room. Or if you're watching on the live stream, you can submit questions online, again, by visiting pollev, that's pollev.com/OCTOEEO, or by downloading the Poll Everywhere app on your smartphone or tablet and enter OCTOEEO to join the presentation and submit your question. And now, but not least, I'd like to invite Chair Sarah Nouini up to report on the activities of the Governance Committee. Committee Vice Chair.
Okay. Good evening et bonsoir. I'm Sarah Nouini and I'm the Vice Chair of the Governance Committee. Before I begin, I would like to thank Chair Matthew Kavanagh and the other members of the committee, including Angela Di Palma, Mireille Loubert, Tom Potter, Rona Walsh, and Marie-Claude Yakov for their hard work and contributions. The college's Governance Committee has a unique role. Our work focuses on council governance, council and committee membership, and the election of council members. We also provide guidance to council on issues such as risk assessment, evaluation, and council member development, succession planning, and transition effectiveness. In other words, we are here to help council do a great job today and even a better one tomorrow. En 2016,
In 2016, we had a major focus on tomorrow, specifically the upcoming 2018 council election. We want more members of the college to be part of the process. We recommended amendments to election regulation, which were approved by council. Our new policies were shared with the Ministry of Education to be incorporated into regulations.
a strategic communication plan for election outreach to further engage our members and increase voter participation. In fact, the college has already started executing this plan. New and more engaging material are being developed to explain what can be a complicated election process. That's phase one. Phase two entails getting our members to vote. We want our members to have an active role in regulating their profession. Moreover, we want members to understand the types of contributions they can make by having a voice at the table. Later this year, college staff will be visiting different teaching communities across Ontario to talk about running for council. There's so much talent and knowledge in our profession that we want to help ensure future generation of council will be able to benefit from it. And let's not forget the professional and personal development and opportunities council membership has provided. I can tell you firsthand that being on council was an eye-opening experience for me. I am proud of the contribution we have all made and continue to make toward self-regulation. As we look ahead at the future, we also considered how we can improve on today's work. Our committee introduced evaluation tools for council to assess two things. Firstly, how well prepared council members felt they were for their role, and secondly, the work done by council. We ran a pilot of the evaluation tool last year and will be presenting the results later this year. Also, in 2016, we proposed amending college bylaws to simplify the election of committee chairs. We also initiated the process of filling a council vacancy for the French language Catholic Board secondary position. As you can see, it's been a busy year, but one that I can confidently say on behalf of the entire committee was productive and fulfilling. We are proud of the work we have done and will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the Governance Committee report. The reports you have just heard are highlights from the council committees in 2016. I would now like to invite College Registrar Michael Salvatore to provide us with his report on the college's operational activities. Michael, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bonsoir. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to provide some operational highlights from the College for 2016, which is really a glimpse into new legislation, new practices and developments, and new and greater connections. Through it all, I hope it will be abundantly plain that our mandate is clear, our goals are aligned, and our efforts consistently bring us closer to enhancing teacher professionalism in the public interest. Student protection in education is an ongoing concern. The experiences of Ontario teachers prove it, but with our help, student protection got an added boost in 2016. In December, after months of consultation, the Protecting Students Act was passed, and new laws were developed to streamline and improve our disciplinary procedures. For example, when we believe that students are at risk, we can share appropriate information with the police and other regulators. We can initiate investigations faster, and we can move quickly to hold disciplinary hearings in matters of a sexual nature where there has already been a criminal conviction.
Thankfully, the need for disciplinary measures are rare. We have 243,000 certified Ontario teachers as members. In any given year, no more than 20 or 30 teaching licenses are revoked. Even so, we know that we must be vigilant in every case so that clearly drawn lines of ethical professional conduct and practice are maintained and students are protected.
Improving disciplinary procedures isn't the only way we protect students, however. In 2016, the college worked closely with Ontario's faculties of education to implement a new 4-semester initial teacher education program. We worked closely with the faculties to ensure that the enhanced program met Ontario's standards for accreditation. We examined the program's impact on such areas as French language, technological education, and Aboriginal teacher education, focusing on program durability and sustainability. The enhanced program protects Ontario students by helping teacher candidates become knowledgeable educators who are sensitive to the needs of a diverse student population. Outre nos échanges avec les étudiantes et étudiants en
addition to our exchange with teaching students and the recommendations of our profession, we have made presentations on a number of classes leading to additional qualifications to school principals and education agents. We have used interactive case studies to help candidates understand the ethics and practice standards, as well as the processes of investigation and hearings.
When we create effective pathways to communicate and strengthen our connections with parents, with members, with applicants, with other regulators. To enhance communication with the public that we serve, we've published information in Punjabi, Tamil, Italian, Spanish, and Chinese. We use targeted, measurable social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to expand and enrich our links to the community. We also launched an applicant eligibility assessment tool to help internationally educated teachers determine whether they are likely to meet our requirements for registration. And we shared strategies and best practices with members of our regulatory communicators network. In October, we conducted a Just One Word social media campaign to support UNESCO's international celebration of World Teachers' Day. We asked Ontarians to use a single word to describe their favorite teacher. 1 in 7 characterized teachers as inspiring. Not surprisingly, we also heard variations of care, trust, respect, and integrity. These are the words most closely associated with the ethical standards for the teaching profession, which are foundational to teacher professionalism and student protection. The campaign connected with 1.8 million people. We received 1,400 comments, generated 928 new followers on social media, and had over 4,500 new visitors to our website, resulting in over 6,000 unique page views. All in all, it was an example of targeted engagement and a wonderful statement about the lifelong impact teachers as professionals have on people. The public awareness initiative that we began in 2014 continued in 2016. We met with school board trustees and parent involvement committees in several areas of the province to enhance awareness of the college and to gather useful feedback. We reached out to the public at various events around the province, including trade shows in London, Ottawa, Toronto, Mississauga, and parent and family conferences in Toronto, Brantford, Alliston, and Richmond Hill. We took part in Burlington's Children's Festival, Le Festival Franco-Ontarien, and Ottawa Capital Pride in Ottawa, Telling Tales Festival in Rockton, Ontario, Pride Toronto, and Word on the Street Toronto. Parents appreciated information about our online resources, such as the Find a Teacher registry, and the chance to subscribe to The Standard, our e-newsletter. As a result, subscriptions almost quadrupled over the course of the year. We spoke with parents and members at focus groups in Sudbury, Windsor, Kingston, Kitchener, and Toronto during July and August. These insights have helped us to improve college communications, products, and services. In May last year, the college hosted its 3rd Inspiring Public Confidence Conference. English and French workshops focused on critical issues concerning regulators, the public, employers of Ontario certified teachers, and providers of teacher education. More than 200 people attended, and the topics ranged from pan-professional discussions of ethical behavior and examining fairness in the 21st century to implementing the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee and addressing challenges facing regulatory agencies. Finally, to ensure that the education sector has accurate data on which to plan, we released results from our Transition to Teaching study of teachers newest to the profession. These data signaled a positive upturn in employment opportunities and greater demand for teachers of French, secondary mathematics, and science and technological education. None of this happens without strong governance. In 2016, we saw a transition of council members through several departures and appointments. Those who concluded their service with us included Terry Price, Irene Chung, William Ngassam, and Shabnam Budwani, and I would like to thank them. In their place, we welcomed Pierre-Olivier Arsenault, Jacqueline Karsmeyer, and James Knopp. As well, Marie-Louise Chartrand and Robert Gagné were each reappointed to council for an additional year. As the teaching profession's regulator, we have clear priorities to facilitate the ongoing professional learning of members, to broaden member engagement in the college, to enhance council and committee effectiveness, and to develop a long-term communications plan to inform the public, improve transparency, and work with other regulators to develop a public appreciation of the value of self-regulation. Our work to set the standard for great teaching continues to grow, and our efforts to blossom. I'm very grateful for the leadership of our council, the dedication of our staff, and the generous support of all of our partners. Our success in 2016 is certainly the product of all of our efforts, and I thank you. And at this point, I think Angela and I would be pleased to take your questions, and I believe we have, you're going to have a little blurb on that as well, all right.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to have some questions in a minute. Oh, wait, one more.
I think another message from Ravi that wanted to recognize that Elizabeth Edgar Wetkamagad also was on the Standards of Practice and Education Committee.
He's our control, Ravi. Way to go. Thank you, Michael, for sharing with us many highlights from 2016. And as Michael just said, we're going to now begin our question and answer session hosted by Michael and Angela. A number of questions have been collected since the beginning of today's meeting, and those in the room, from those in the room and those streaming from home also. The questions will be displayed on the screens. There's one in the back of the room too. Duplicate questions or questions outside of the scope of the college legislative mandate will not appear. If you have any additional questions, you can write them down and put them in the boxes around the room again, or if you're live streaming from home, that pollev.com, I said this a few times, I hope you're getting it, /OCTOEEO, or by downloading the Poll Everywhere app on your smartphone or tablet and entering OCTOEEO to join the presentation and submit your questions. To ensure that these questions are answered accurately, with everyone on screen, please provide only written questions. We will try to get through as many as we can. Any questions we cannot get through will be answered and posted online after today's meeting. So let's get started.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And our first question, when will our annual registration fee be decreasing? Margaret, I almost want to ask you to answer this question since you spoke about that. And we certainly know that members want value for their annual membership fee. And we've certainly talked a lot, I think, about the value of belonging to a profession. Our council sets the annual fee at the lowest possible rate to allow us to fulfill our legislated mandate. The fee, and we will get to the when part, the fee, it is the lowest among the regulated professions, due mostly to our size. I think it may be unlikely that the fee would decrease, but it would be possible. And Angela, I don't know if you want to add to when that might be a possibility.
The topic of the fee is something that certainly, should you ever have an opportunity to attend a council meeting when it's up for debate, you will witness how much discussion does occur about that item. It is, the council takes the fee very seriously, and council is responsible for taking into consideration the amount of resources that the college needs to conduct its operational activities at a level where risk won't be introduced to the organization. And I did speak with the chair of the Finance Committee previously and shared the question with her and invite her to add any other comments should she wish to. So I'll invite Marie-Louise Chartrand up to address you as well. It's something that actually came up at today's meeting, and a healthy question and answer period occurred already in advance of the issue coming forward in a more detailed degree in September. So we've already begun the discussion.
Thank you. The fee structure is a result of a very defined process. As mentioned by the Chair of Council, Angela, and Michael, there is first the establishment of the priorities that Council have to deal with, and also the funds required to fulfill our legal obligation. So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the debate about the fee. For 2018, it's doubtful that we'll have a fee reduction at this moment, based on information we have. Could it happen thereafter? We have to go through the same process on an annual basis. So it is possible that at some point there will be a fee reduction, but at this time we have to say that it's unlikely.
The second question, what are the ways the college might be willing to help members find work? Are networking events a consideration? And really, employment is beyond the purview and the mandate of the Ontario College of Teachers. That said, and we've already referenced it, we do have a transition to teaching report that we publish each year, which provides valuable information on supply and demand issues. And I think we reported out a little bit that we are overcoming slowly the surplus of teachers. As far as networking events, because employment is beyond our scope, we wouldn't have networking events. However, we do have monthly sessions for newly certified teachers to help them understand their certificate, to understand their qualifications. And at those events, where really our goal is to explain the certification process, membership status, any conditions, there are opportunities for them to meet each other and for us to highlight that on the website, we do have some resources on careers in education, links to sites like Jobs in Education, where they can find information from those whose mandate it is really to look at employment. The other element that I might introduce is that we do have a number of additional qualification courses for all teachers, but that are especially helpful for those who are starting their career. So courses in classroom management, an orientation to teaching in Ontario that might help them, or building inclusive classrooms that might help them in the early stages of their career. Angela, did you want to add anything on that? Yeah.
So apart from the college's responsibility, just something that came to mind for me was that, especially for teachers, occasional teachers, or long-term occasional teachers, there would be opportunities perhaps with a beginning teachers conference that some federations offer, and also just in terms of having an opportunity to participate in or attend a conference, an education conference where other teachers would be, and other potentially some employers, other individuals and organizations involved in education that may provide some networking opportunity.
The next question makes reference to another element that we spoke about this evening, and it's the demand for teachers in certain areas. And so what is the college doing to respond to the overwhelming demand for teachers in French? The writer is a full-time permanent teacher in one of our boards and wants to take French and lessons with Alliance Française, but indicates there's no program for teachers in Ontario, unlike in BC. Instead of hiring new teachers with French, does OCT have funding in place for teachers who may wish to qualify to teach in French? So we don't have funding in place. We do have a number of courses, of course, that prepare teachers to teach in both French language schools and in French as a second language, additional basic qualifications at the intermediate and senior level in French as a second language, a new Schedule C course to prepare teachers to teach French immersion. And of course, we do have insight into supply and demand through our transition to teaching study, which we provide to employers, to faculties of education, to help them understand what are the demands and where might they want to put their focus in preparing new teachers. Angela, anything? Yeah. So the next question, why am I paying dues to an organization whose only direct service to me is to investigate my potential misconduct or incompetence? Should these funds not come from my employer, i.e. boards or public funds? The college, like other regulators of other professions, whether it's nursing or architecture or medicine, does collect a fee from their members. It is the way that we self-regulate. And I would say that there are a number of direct services that members do receive from the college, and a number of indirect services in the way that the college promotes the profession and elevates our profession, among others. I think we all as members benefit from the college. If we take, for example, the accreditation function, we know that new teachers who are going to be joining us alongside us in the classrooms will have the same opportunities to gain qualifications and competence and continue to represent the college or to represent the profession well. And that's a benefit, I think, for all members, and it's part of that notion of self-regulation. And certainly, one of the other functions is to keep students safe, and that's an interest that I think all teachers have, and an important function that the college plays, and a way that the fee is used. Angela, do you have anything?
Yes,
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be within the college's mandate to determine that membership fees would come from an employer, so it wouldn't be appropriate for them to get involved in that. However, I know that the idea has come forward at previous annual meeting of members of some teacher organizations, and it could be within their purview to consider. There are services such as resources from the Margaret Wilson Library, the professional standards documents that our Chair of Standards of Practice and Education Committee referenced as well, that support the teaching profession according to its objective to facilitate the ongoing professional learning of its members. So there's certainly value there. Sure. Okay. So the next question asks, how does the college's decision to conduct tours of its office building during Doors Open Toronto on May 27, 28 fit into its mandate as a self-governing regulatory body acting in the public interest? And I would offer that the college has a responsibility to communicate with the public, and so that was an opportunity for not just members, but for people from the general public to learn about the college, and it was quite a successful event. So certainly as part of that mandate and that recommendation also that connects with the Lesage recommendations from former Chief Justice Lesage, so that more members are aware of the organization and know that their children are being taught by people in a profession that are governed and that have standards of practice and ethical standards.
And I think, and having participated in it, it's less about the college participating in Doors Open and more a vehicle for us to communicate with the public and to meet them in spaces where they dwell, as the other regulatory colleges do. And in this case, it gave us an opportunity to give a tour of the building, to talk about the functions of the college, to educate members of the profession and also members of the public about what the college does, and to actually see the facility and connect our mandate to some of the spaces that we have. Do you want to take that one? Why are the next question, why are my annual membership dues to my affiliate so much more than my college fees, and why can't they be equalized? I think I need a glass of water.
I would invite, no. I mean, each organization has such a different function that I don't know that it might be challenging to compare, the dollar that's equated with the service provided. That's the only thing that I can offer.
And the only thing that I can, say, and we did say this as well, it is an economy of scale. We have 243,000 members, and so we're able to levy a fee, knowing that each of those members pays it, and then to look at what is the scope of our mandate and what annual fee do we need in order to generate an annual budget that allows us to do the work that we do. And I'm sure the affiliates would be able to answer that question, looking at what their scope of their mandate is and what are the costs that they need to cover. So if the college's the next question, investigating committee is supposed to reflect the college's mandate as a self-regulating professional body, then why did the college appoint a serving RCMP officer, Inspector James Knopp, to the committee? I think the first thing to note is that, and as has been said, in our governance structure, we have both elected members of the profession on our governing council and then appointed members who are appointed by the provincial government and come from a variety of different walks of life and bring their experience to the table where the public interest is really the, what is that issue and what's represented. Angela, do you want to?
Council members sign an oath at their orientation session, and that occurs in advance of participating in any meeting of council. And in that oath, council members commit to the guiding principle of serving and protecting the public interest and ensuring that any memberships or voluntary or paid positions that that person might be connected with won't conflict with council member duties. And I invite now our council member James Knopp to speak to that question from his personal experience. James?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and to the Registrar for the opportunity to address this. And thank you especially to the person who posed the question, because although the provincial legislature deliberately turned its mind to the issue of including public appointees amongst the membership of the council, I think it's really important from time to time to visit why that's so and why that's important. In my own case, I have an expertise in administrative law. For the past 8 years, I've been chairing disciplinary tribunals and conduct boards for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and that's what I bring to the table. For the Teachers College, I also have some experience in teaching, although not in a formal classroom setting. I bring my experience to the table in that regard. Moving from the general to the specific, I hope it provides some comfort to the person who posed the question that our two organizations are very similar in that the public trust is as fundamental a component of the teaching profession. It's a cornerstone of the mandate of the teaching profession, very much the same as it is for the policing profession. And if you look at the core values of the teaching profession, care, integrity, respect, and trust, they align completely with the core values of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police: honesty, integrity, professionalism, compassion, accountability, and respect. So I hope that provides some measure of comfort to the person who posed the question. And thank you again for having posed it. I think it's important to revisit that from time to time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, James. Une question en français. Comment devenir enseignant?
A question in French. How can you become a teacher in Ontario with a foreign diploma after having taught mechanics for 30 years and with so I would invite you to go to the heading becoming a member of the college, which is especially for people trained outside Canada. And I think we have a robust process. And even if people don't have permanent status here in Canada, can be candidates to the order, can apply to the college. And we have information sessions every month at the college, and we have them we have some online too, to help people outside Canada to apply, and it is quite possible with foreign diploma to apply and to succeed. I think that more than 90% of people who apply succeed in registering to the order, to the college, sorry.
This question, so we're going to take it. Is it possible for the OCT, the college, to come to a school to talk? And absolutely. We welcome invitations from our members and from schools and from all of our partners to come and talk about the college. We love doing that. And we think it's especially important when we're focusing on our public awareness initiative, what we do as a college, what we have ahead of us with some of the great remarks and advice that we've received from our panel this evening. And so I would suggest that one place to look is on our website under our Speakers Bureau. We have a number of topics where we have ready-made presentations that we can come out and make, and other resources that we can provide to schools on our professional advisories, how to use social media and electronic communication with members, how to keep students safe, and a whole series of other tools. And we do occasionally receive invitations to speak at schools and other areas. Angela's anything? Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for providing those thoughtful, engaging questions. And thank you, Michael and Angela, for answering them. Based on what we heard today, 2016 was certainly an eventful and successful year for the college. And I would like to take the time again to thank today's participants, including our panelists. Thank you very much. Speakers and attendees, both those in person and those online. Before we conclude, I have one final announcement. That is that the college's Margaret Wilson Library on the 12th floor is hosting an open house. So please visit to see the full range of free services available, including resources for members and candidates for council. And with that, the Ontario College of Teachers annual meeting of members is now adjourned. And I hope to see you all next year. Thank you very much.